Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, hey, how you doing? Heck of a week, and everyone, I hope that you've enjoyed just whatever you're doing. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a great show planned for you, because on this Friday, like every Friday, we have a nice little segment with the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He is our science and tech trends correspondent, and ladies and gentlemen, 4 great stories every single Friday to send you out on a high note. Yes, that's what we try to do. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where we'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, reviews, podcasts, and of course the video archives, as well as links to social media. And with that being said, don't get me started on Twitter. Oh my goodness. But anyways, everyone, welcome into the program, and why don't we go ahead and just bring Ralph on and get the show started. So as I said before, longtime Computer America contributor, correspondent, and of course now he is our science and technology trends correspondent for ourselves here at Computer America, as well as the tech insider for the Mark Mason Show over at KEX Portland, Oregon. Ladies and gentlemen, Ralph Bond. Ralph, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be back, and this week we'll start things off with a fascinating way to use leftover coffee grounds.
And I always just thought that, my mom always wanted them for her garden, and like that was it.
Yes.
Compost your garden. That's really all there is to
Yes.
it. But turns out, it makes you go. It can make other things go too. So before we get started with the stories and all that good stuff, Ralph, why don't we just tell the nice folks what our mission here, what your mission is here on the program.
Yeah, well, Ben, as you know, of course, I'm an aggregator of science and tech news features I find by monitoring a host of online news outlets all day, every day, driving everybody around me crazy, but that's what I do. And I look for important stories that don't usually capture mainstream press attention, and sometimes they're kind of weird and quirky, but a lot of times they're very important, and again, they just fly under the radar. I'm always on the lookout for news that gives a glimpse into where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. And what I do with each news item is present the essential points. That's what Ben and I do with this segment, and we hope in a digestible form. And I stress to the audience, as Ben mentioned in passing, come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes, we call it, the show notes for today's show, because it'll have links and pictures and so forth, because once again, what Ben and I do is just give you the top end, high end sort of things, key points, and you can get the links to the stories and dive as deep into the geekiness of the science and technology as you want. So with that said, hey, we've got a great first story.
Yeah, this first story is, again, something that I think we all can do, although assuming that you don't use K-Cups, you just throw them directly in the trash, as environmentally friendly as that is. This might be a little bit, maybe swing the other way to turning coffee grounds into, something green and useful after its first life. So let's go ahead. Story number 1.
Yeah, this is talk about uplifting. And again, friends, as Ben mentioned, what we're going to do in this segment is leave you feeling good instead of bad, which is what most of the news services do, is just make you sad and mad. But we're going to make you happy and uplifted. Okay, here we go. Story number 1. Researchers discover that microscopic algae eating coffee grounds can help make green biodiesel fuel. Got this from 2 great outlets, interestingengineering.com and techexplorer.com. And again, the show notes, the links are all there for you. So, of course, no surprise, every year massive amounts of spent coffee grounds end up in landfills. But on a positive note, and this relates to what Ben mentioned a moment ago, a lot of Starbucks coffee grounds, for example, are used as compost on farms and or offered free for home garden use. And that's great. And a segue here for a second. I've been doing that for quite a few years. I have a little bucket in the garage, and I take my coffee grounds and I queue them up. And when the little bucket's full, I go out and I sprinkle them on my lawn. Grass loves it. And here in Oregon, blueberries are a huge, huge agricultural crop for us.
Yeah.
It turns out blueberries love coffee grounds mixed into their soil. If you're growing blueberries, folks, keep those coffee grounds. So anyway, with that said, but what if coffee grounds could play a role in making a sustainable biofuel? And that's what two scientists at England's Aston, that's ASTON, Aston University, have discovered. They've figured out a way to produce high-quality green biodiesel fuel by feeding leftover coffee grounds to microscopic algae. And the researchers found that spent coffee grounds provide both food and an ideal environment for the microscopic algae to grow. Now, it's a very in-depth process, but we're kind of boil it down to the simplistic here. So the oil extracted from the algae is mixed with other ingredients to produce the elements that make up a green and sustainable biodiesel fuel. And I stress again, if you go out to the article, you can get more details, but we'll give you a little more details here. In specific, one way to make biodiesel fuel from microalgae is to take oil extracted from the algae, and then it's mixed with alcohol and an acid or a base to produce the fatty acid methyl esters that make up the biodiesel. So this gets into some really geeky sort of stuff, but that's the essential essence of how, typically speaking, microalgae oil is used to ultimately become an ingredient or a contributor to the making of biodiesel. So I don't want to mislead the audience. It's not like the oil from the microalgae immediately goes into the gas tank. No, it becomes part of a process with other ingredients that in turn create a sustainable and green biodiesel fuel. And the nice part about this is the resulting biodiesel fuel produces minimal emissions, offers good engine performance, and meets U.S. and European specifications. Now, the article didn't talk about Asia, but it's still pretty great to think that you could take coffee grounds and think of them millions upon millions. One article I saw, and I couldn't cross-corroborate it, said that Starbucks alone annually is like 4.5 million tons of coffee grounds are created by that company. And it didn't indicate whether that was just North America or worldwide, but regardless, you can just stop and think of all the coffee places and home use and business and restaurants. The billions of coffee grounds there must be out there could go to work and help us fight the climate change with green biofuel. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and I just threw out a Google search about what does Starbucks do with their coffee grounds already, and it looks like at probably just at participating locations, you can go in and I guess I don't know if you bring your own bucket, but they'll give you their spent coffee grounds for your garden and stuff like that. So they're already fairly conscious that their waste is desirable for home gardeners and people like that. Of course, doing this en masse would be a kind of a question of itself. But Ralph, we already do that for spent frying oil and cooking oil and cooking grease. Right. This is possible. We just have to find a good way to do it. And by the way, I was just kind of glossing over the press release from Aston University and picked up this little thing as well, assuming that you didn't cover it and I wasn't really paying attention, but that they actually use the coffee grounds, and before they were using, you can see up here on the video portion, they're actually the structure that they're on. So they have like a bed of coffee grounds, and they said normally they use styrofoam and nylon to kind of be the substrate for the algae to grow on, and instead they're using the coffee grounds as the substrate and the nutrients. So not only are you reducing the foam and the nylon and all that kind of thing, but you are of course double purposing it for nutrients as well. It's like a win-win for the algae. It's amazing.
That's why I just love that story. And by the way, regarding Starbucks and giving out the excess coffee grounds, I don't know what it's like in other parts of the United States, here in Oregon, a lot of our Starbucks, when you walk in, sometimes at the front counter, you might see down on the ground, abutting to the desk where the baristas are, bags of this already bagged up and ready for you to just take, if you will. Or friends, if you're interested in trying this out, ask when you go to a Starbucks the next time you go, ask, hey, do you guys have coffee grounds you give away? They may very well do that. And again, I stress, great for your garden, great for your lawns. Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Definitely. And of course, we've covered using algae on the show before, for a couple of years now. But just this idea that you can, Ralph, like oil and natural gas, it's from the ground, it's non-renewable, it's, there's a finite amount, there's a lot of it, but there's a finite amount, and let alone all the other environmental impacts. The thought of just being able to just grow your own fuel especially out of things like algae, always intrigued me. So that's a perfect story. That's, great story number one. Very, very helpful. So story number one. Story number two, although I will say, Ralph, I bet algae doesn't smell as good as the ones that use converted cooking oil in engines. I don't know if you've ever smelled those. They smell like French fries, when they burn that oil.
Yes.
Way more delicious. But either way,
maybe these smell like coffee. Who knows?
I welcome that. I welcome that. Story number one. Story number two. And let's talk about wearables now. But a really cool one.
Yes, this comes from medgadget.com, folks. Is a very interesting website if you're interested in medical technology, which is one of my passions. So the headline here is new small wearable EEG patch wirelessly measures brain activity. And so to really get a feel for this story, you need to maybe have had personal experience or know about EEG, but this is really potentially a very, very positive breakthrough. So here we go.
I think that a lot of people are probably familiar with Hollywood, and maybe they've seen someone in a chair being tested and they have all the little wires coming out of that shower cap looking thing on their head.
Yes,
but that's way better.
Yeah. So this is, you're absolutely right. So today, evaluating brain activity using electroencephalography, or EEG, and going forward, we'll just use the short EEG, requires a trip to a medical facility where the patient, often wearing, as Ben was alluding to, specialized headgear with lots of wired sensors, little patches with wires coming out of them. And all of that's connected to large electronic monitoring systems. So to date, EEG testing outside of a medical facility has not been a really viable option for convenient long-term monitoring. So if you think you're a patient with a condition that your physicians would really ideally like to be able to monitor maybe every other day or at least once a week or something, well, then trekking down to a medical facility and getting all hooked up, it's tedious.
Yeah.
And so this is why this is so important. But here we go. All of this may change thanks to researchers at the Osaka University in Japan. And they've developed a small, ultra-thin, near-transparent EEG monitoring patch that can be worn on the forehead with no wires attached to sensors on the user's head and no additional bulky gear required. Let that sink in. And if you have the show notes up on your screen, folks, you can see the image of what we're talking about. The lower part of the image there shows the forehead of the person, and then to the right shows the image of the patch itself. So in specific, the wearable patch consists of a stretchable organic elastomer and a conductive polymer, and is largely transparent. We're not trying to say it's fully transparent, but it does make it, they claim, relatively difficult to spot when placed on the forehead. Wearable, now, little truth in lending here, wearable EEGs have been developed previously and include electrodes that contact the scalp, but these bulky headsets are not convenient for long-term use and can cause pain and discomfort if worn for a long time. So again, up to now, technicians and medical people have been butting up against the wall of this barrier. How can I have a patient who needs frequent monitoring have something that doesn't require coming down to the medical facility? So the Osaka University's new EEG patch provides brain activity readings, that are comparable in accuracy to those obtained using larger and more expensive equipment and headgear. And by using this gets really interesting in my opinion. And by using the camera-based data capture technology on the patient's smartphone, and this is called photoplasmography. Oh my goodness. I had to break that whole out and give myself a cheat word, break it up in little bits, because otherwise it was like a tongue twister, shortened usually to just PPG technology. Data gathered by the EEG patch can be scanned wirelessly or transmitted, better said, and then shared with the medical team. And wow. Have you seen on TV, I think it's called Cardia, and it's meant for cardio patients, and
Cardia.
use Cardia, yeah. And they use your smartphone, and they have this little, looks like a credit card or something, and you put your fingers on the card, and it does a wireless, analysis of your heart and so forth. And they're a fascinating bunch too. Ben, you might want to get them on the show.
Cardia Mobile. So Cardia with a K. Yeah.
Okay, and so what's cool about that is this sort of conceptually akin to this, because the idea that you don't have to go into a big office, you don't have to get all hooked up. Right. You just put your fingers on this little card. So it's akin to that kind of idea of how can we make this mobile? How can we make this easy? How can we make this something that the user can do at home or virtually anywhere? And that's what's so great about this.
Yeah, and of course there's the idea of doing it mobile and kind of reducing stress and all that kind of thing. But there's also more data, if you can wear for 24 hours instead of being in a lab somewhere and only able to wear it for 4, 5, 6 hours. I'm sure doctors would love 24 hours of data instead of 6 to work from. That's much more important. And I've never seen this cardio thing either before. This is really cool.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah, very compact.
My friend Mark Mason, host of the Mark Mason Show on KEX Radio, which you mentioned is part of what I do, he actually has one of these. He's like me. He's had heart surgery and all this good stuff. And he loves it. He says it's just fascinating. He said his doctor loves it too, because now he can send him periodic little, here's what's going on.
Yeah. I'm sure if anything feels weird, you can just, kind of give yourself a little test. It's very cool.
Check this out. Think about paramedics and other people out in the field that need to get a quick read on somebody. I mean, gosh, how great is that, instead of having to hook them all up? So we digress a little bit here, but here's a little bit more about this photo. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that we digress, but it's also kind of all connected, where medical technology is not just about, getting better, clear scans and, and more sensitive sensors and things like that. It's also about just miniaturizing and democratizing. I don't know about you, Ralph, but a couple of years ago, my mom actually bought a defibrillator that's just hanging in the pantry with all of our first aid supplies. We never had that before, but now it's super affordable, and you can have a defibrillator right there in your house. It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, and
way better than car battering someone. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to be going more and more and more in this direction as we go into the future. So another one of these uplifting stories. But I've loved this thing about photoplasmography. I thought, what the heck is that? So dug up a little bit about this. PPG is an uncomplicated and inexpensive optical measuring method that is often used for heart rate monitoring purposes, which we were just talking about with this Cardia product. And PPG is a non-invasive technology that uses a light source and a photodetector at the surface of the skin to measure the volumetric variations of blood circulation. Now, that was a generic definition of PPG. I think the researchers in Japan have used some kind of variation of this, where, as I understand it, your camera on your smartphone is going to interact with this patch, get the data, and then you can share it with your medical team. So pretty interesting stuff. I love it.
I'm sure that there's a little bit difference in, I guess, kind of the accuracy, but if you're looking for something broad, some kind of seizure or some kind of spike in activity or things like that, I'm sure that a simple patch right there on the forehead is much more desirable than, the full-blown gear. So very cool. And it's just amazing that you can go from, again, the shower cap to a patch. It's very impressive. So
yes.
Great medical research. Story number 2. Story number 3. Let's go ahead and robots have been taking more and more of responsibility in human society, and I'm glad that someone's finally working on robots that can finally replace humans for human interaction. So let's do story number 3.
somebody that'll listen to all the stuff I have to say and actually appreciate it and probably not run away.
Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, let me simulate that for you. So Ralph just did a self-deprecating humor, and now.
Yeah. Yes. Did you have a way to appropriately laugh?
Let's see. Ooh, I got this.
We're jumping around all over, folks. Here's another great story from Japan. Mm-hmm. Another one from Japan. Headline here: Scientists are working to create a humanoid robot that can appropriately laugh with you. Hang on to that word, appropriately laugh with you. That's the challenge. It's a huge, huge challenge. So this is another interesting development from Japan. As I mentioned, researchers at Kyoto University in Japan are working on, in my opinion, this is my opinion, one of the greatest challenges in artificial intelligence-based humanoid robotics, trying to teach a robot when it's communicating with a human, if it's appropriate to laugh, and decide whether to let out a little chuckle or a hearty laugh. Stop and think just for a moment the incredible complexity of everything I just said in that one paragraph. Listening to a human that you're communicating with, analyzing what they're saying, being able to, in the fraction of a blink of an eye, determine, should I laugh or not? How much should I laugh? What's going on? I mean, I just...
you know what's always fun to me, Ralph? I like to think back to other research that we've kind of learned on the show that they've kind of pushed through, and you can think of things like AlphaGo and like poker playing AI robots, and you may think it's not really related, but when you take, let's say, the poker robot, for instance, poker is acting on information you can assume, but you do not have. You do not know your opponent's cards, but you do know your cards, what's on the table. You know some information, but not all of it. And, advancements on a poker playing robot can then be sent to this, for instance, where you don't know exactly how much you should laugh. You don't know what really the context is, but you know enough information to maybe give you the correct answer. So robotics is all connected, and I love it.
Yeah, and it's just so great. So again, it's all about giving, their artificial intelligence advanced robot named Erica, and of course you have the show notes. You can see what this robot looks like. Giving her the ability to share laughter with a human and react naturally at an appropriate level in a conversational exchange. Now, in the show notes, you'll see a picture of their shared laughter experiments where a human is talking to the robot and then says something.
Did they have to make it look like a date, though? Did they have to make it look like a date?
It doesn't look like a hot date to me. There's no wine on the table, and they're sitting pretty far apart from each other.
But there's flowers, and it's a nice little setting.
Well, the flowers. Okay, I'll go for that. So in their shared laughter experiments, which again, the show notes have an image, a human says something and laughs. Erica's response is then guided by three artificial intelligence subsystems, and think about all this having to happen just like sub-instantaneously, right? One subsystem, the first gets in line here, says that it detects the laughter. That's number one. A second layer to decide whether to laugh or not based on why the human laughed. Think of the complexity of that. Oh, wow. A third to choose the type and level of appropriate laughter response. Again, I stress, folks, just stop and think about the depth of the challenge from an AI point of view that 3 steps I just laid out involves. So, I just melts my mind.
Definitely. And by the way, and I was kind of joking that, they made it look like a date. And by the way, I would not put that past Japan. Japan is its own little entity. I will say, though, that they do kind of point out with these cords heading out of the flowers, Ralph, these are actually microphone arrays to better pick up the subtle sounds from the individual speaking.
Yeah.
So they actually have, they of course have like this shotgun mic here, but they actually have like 4 or 5 different microphones to accurately pick up all the little nuances of speech. So
yeah, and again, makes processing sense. All of that is impressive. So the research is part of an effort by the team to give humanoid robots a distinct character through conversational behaviors such as laughing, which is what we focused on here. But these guys are also, of course, and other robotics researchers around the world are looking at things like not only laughing, but eye gaze, gestures, and speaking style. And the bottom line is with this team, which I thought was really very good for them to say in their announcement, they predict that it will take at least 10 to 20 years of continued research and work before we can finally have a conversational exchange with a robot that feels completely natural. And they went on to say, as if you were, speaking with a family member or a friend. So, right. And I told my son about this story, and he goes, instead of being kind of like, oh, that's really great, he goes, that's terrifying. Because we're getting closer and closer to the Terminator, getting closer to, well, think about children.
I wouldn't put Arnold Schwarzenegger as the epitome of speaking the English language, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
but it's the whole kind of scary thought of a world where are we going to reach a point where it would be hard maybe for a small child to distinguish a real human from a humanoid robot? And is it good? Is it bad? Of course, all this stuff could be turned for evil or it could be for good. But I thought it was interesting how my son's immediate reaction wasn't like, oh, that's so cool, that's so great. It was like, yikes, that's kind of scary.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to spend a couple hours this weekend doing something related but not fun, call up tech support. It doesn't really matter who, just any Fortune 500 company. Ralph, their tech support, like the automated tech support, has actually gotten very good. They won't laugh when you laugh. But we've had companies on the show before, and this was 2-3 years ago, that their job was to detect the emotional state of a caller on a tech support line. So they can hear, this person's getting frustrated, this person's getting angry. They will escalate your queue above people who are just bored and nonchalant and whatever. I'm not saying that you should yell at the robots. I'm just saying that they are capable of something pretty close. Now, of course, they can't talk back to you and that kind of thing. They sound pretty natural, but not perfectly natural. Ralph,
right.
It is scary, but at the same time, I know that when I first heard like my first conversational type of kind of phone tree, I was a little annoyed because like it was this female voice and she was like, "Sure, let me pull that up for you," and it played like this fake like keyboard clicking sound, like and I was like,
that kind of crap.
And I was like, "You liar! You're a robot. You're not typing. Why are you wasting my time?"
Yeah, that is
playing
stupid.
a keyboard typing sound. So like. I think that some things that we use robots for, conversational, good conversation skills are not really necessary. But, for toys and for, maybe just interacting with things, learning, teaching, imagine if you had a subject, calculus can only be taught so many ways. Imagine having a conversation with a calculus teacher that, is available 24/7, can explain things to you. That sounds like a really cool world to me, Ralph.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of positive, and that's kind of what made me interesting how my son reacted, because you and I think we're both so techno geeks that we just maybe unintentionally a little Pollyannish and positive and so forth. But my son went right to the possible negatives. But anyway, you're completely right. By the way, my best tip when you're getting on with one of these automated help support things, the tip I've learned is, I frequently will say, sometimes if I get the answer I want through the automated system, that's wonderful. But if I'm not, I just keep saying, keep saying, I need to talk to a human now. And they go, what choice would you like? I need to talk. And eventually the algorithms will get me onto a human if they have a human available. So there's a little tip from my experience. And
I like to go 19th century with it and just say operator, 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 and it'll essentially do the same thing. So
yes.
Yeah, life pro tips as well. So there's that one. And again, I would expect nothing less of Japan. They have Ralph in Japan. They have concierge, for hotels that look just like this. This AI robot person.
Erica,
Japan is unique, and then we'll move on to the next story. I just want to say one more thing. I'm sure a lot of people know this, Ralph. They have a population crisis, and they're trying to solve it with robotics. We'll see what happens, but of course, I think that the number of people above 65 outnumber the people below 65 in Japan.
Wow.
They have a massive problem with, the next generation, kid having, who's going to take care of all these people. And they see robotics as the way for keeping mobility, keeping people in their homes, quality of life, healthcare. So expect to see a lot more of this from Japan.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's truly interesting.
So story number 3, story number 4, our last one. And you also sent a video, which I'm going to have up on the screen as well.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got that.
So let's go ahead and jump into story number 4.
Yes. And among the many things that I like to track is agricultural technology. And I also love construction technology. And both sound like counterintuitive. Well, farms, that's not technically interesting. Construction, that's just hard hats and concrete. No, folks. The technology is really impacting the world of agriculture every minute of every day as we're going forward. And that's how this story fits in. Got this from CNN. Headline here, prototype team of farm robots. A team of farm robots can identify weeds, zap them, and then plant crop seeds. Okay. And the video is great, by the way. So an outfit called Small Robot in the United Kingdom has created a team of 3 prototype mobile robots. And if you don't have the benefit of seeing the imagery right now, each of these 3 robots, they're 4-wheel robots, kind of sort of the size of a go-kart, but that's a very rough approximation. But these robots the team can precisely identify and electrocute weeds in a farm field and then plant seeds in the cleared soil. The goal of the 3 autonomous artificial intelligence-based robots, no surprise for that, with the funny names, I love this, the funny names of Tom, Dick, and Harry, is to rid farm fields. The goal here is to rid farm fields of weeds with minimal use of chemicals and heavy machinery. That's the goodness part of this thing. So Robot Tom steps up first, and he can scan 49 acres a day to identify weeds, collecting data to create a complete digital map of a field. And then Robot Dick, who moves along on these really creepy spider-like legs, you got to see the image, then uses that data to precisely locate and totally destroy weeds by delivering an electrical current that penetrates through the roots of the plant and through the soil and then back up, which completely destroys the weeds. So it really
Yeah. So 2 things. One, if you're watching the video portion, I'm going to hit play right now. This is Robot Dick, and they identify a weed, and it looks like little soldering iron kind of tips.
Isn't that something? Yeah,
and it kind of flashes. Ralph, and I'm sure that it kind of operates on the same process. Like, I never heard about this before. Have you ever seen people in their lawns with flamethrowers, like the roofing torches, and they kill weeds with roofing torches?
I have. I've seen them use that more, Ben, when they're trying to kill weeds that are in concrete cracks or on the road, out in our roadways. I've seen our Hillsboro Civic, what would be the right word? Guys coming around in the trucks, and they'll zap them with the little flamethrower thing. Exactly.
so I never knew how they really worked. I thought, you set it on fire and it's going to die. That's good. It actually, from my understanding, it heats up it flashes the liquid in the roots and essentially boils the roots instantly. And it kills the plants. I'm sure that the electrical current does something very similar.
Well, yeah, and I'll give you a little very simplistic DIY tip my wife got me onto, or she found out about, and she's been doing this for years now. If we have some kind of weirdo weeds out in the concrete and they're just little pesky guys that just don't seem to want to give up.
Does it say feed me, Seymour?
She boils a kettle of water, boiling hot, and pours the boiling water on the weeds, and that takes them out. And I bet it's the same thing going on as with the flamethrower. So there's a tip for you, gardeners. So Robot Dick goes around on his weirdo spider legs, zapping things with electrical current, getting rid of the weeds, completely getting rid of the weeds. And then at last stage, Robot Harry's turn comes into play, and he plants seeds in the now weed-free soil. And so using the 3-robot team, the researchers at Small Robot, which has been working on autonomous robotic weed killing and seed planting robots since 2017, And all of these products are still in the prototype stage and undergoing continued testing. But they predict that if they, in the future, when these guys are fully deployed and ready to go, that farmers could reduce operational costs by 40%. And here's the really important one for me, and herbicide chemical usage by up to 95%. Wow. And that might help offset the obvious cost of initial investment in these robotics, but pretty cool stuff. And again, friends, the one thing I really want to stress is if you think the world of agriculture is dull and not techie, and the same for construction, please think again. There's some magnificent stuff going on in the world of agricultural tech.
This video that you sent is amazing as well. They kind of show the, kind of the back end, and they show 12 million emerging plants detected. So, when they're just barely popping out of the ground, they just have a few leaves.
Wow.
They show 12 million plants within a hectare, whatever the size of the field it was.
Right.
Well, probably not a hectare. They said it was, a couple of miles or whatever. Anyways,
right.
And they show, and they actually categorize it into, the wheat plants that you want, the new growth, and then there's also the weeds, the questionable. Over 250,000 weeds were detected.
Isn't that great?
That is amazing that it can not only see the very beginnings of a plant, but be like, yep, that's a weed, that's a plant, that's a weed, that's a plant, and do it 12 million times. That's incredible. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop the video there because we're about done for the day. But if you want to check out more of the video, more of the show notes, more of everything that we talked about, we'll have it over at computeramerica.com. And as always, we'll have Ralph's segments. We have a whole section dedicated to him over in the YouTube channel. He, of course, has his own website that we'll link to where you'll find more of Ralph and his segments on our program, as well as Ralph's segments over on the Mark Mason Show. Now, Ralph, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the program. This was a lot of fun, and I feel I would say inspired, but I feel like I can't do any of what we just talked about, but I do feel uplifted. So Ralph, thank you so much. And everyone else, until next weekend, or until next Friday, have a good one. Bye-bye.